So my name is Bobby Mink, head coach at Choice Consulting and Management, and welcome to Choices Create Change podcast. And today we'll be interviewing Matt Haynes. We're so excited to have you with us here, Matt, today. Welcome and thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Matt, owner and manager, partner for Tracewater Homes. He does a lot of training and leadership development, change management, team building, executive coaching, management coaching. I know he has a huge history in finances, so some financial coaching, business consulting, and some strategic planning. And he's helped me with several clients through the years. So, Matt, thanks so much for taking time to be with us today.
Absolutely. I'd love to be here. And yeah, it's been great. We've worked with several clients over the years and, had some good results on that. So I look forward to our conversation.
Yes. So tell us a little about maybe the companies that you're currently running, but also maybe some positions and some experiences you've had in the past, just so we can kind of get to know you.
Yeah, absolutely. I can take my journey in the home building world all the way back to being like 13 years old and starting working for a remodeler who was a neighbor of mine. And I fell in love with it. And it's kind of all I've ever done. Went to school and got a degree in accounting and an MBA in finance, but just stayed in the home building business that whole time. I've had my own companies over the years. I've also had roles with other home builders where I've been, CFO. I've run operations for several home builders. Also ran a land development company for a home building company. Currently living in the panhandle of Florida. We started a custom home building company when we moved here. And during that time, I also got into the consulting world a little more, and that's how we met. Met through a mutual client, and have done some other things together in that world. And the consulting side has been a lot of systems. I've really focused heavily everywhere I've gone over the years on system implementation. I really saw the value early on of being able to manage things, within a centralized, hub. And so very early adapter on some of these, these project management systems. I mean, when I first started out, I was doing a lot of it in Excel and, using Outlook calendars and trying to create as much as I could that way. And so I've loved watching the growth of where we're at now and seeing things, transpire with AI and everything else. And it's really cool to watch. What we're focusing on heavily right now is we started a home building company called Tracewater Homes, and Tracewater Homes will do everything from we'll start with a napkin and we'll build you a custom home that anything you can dream of. We can build it. We also have a side of Tracewater Homes that is semi-custom. So think pre-priced plans, pre-priced structural options, pre-curated selections, and we take you through a very, very guided process to get to the point of knowing exactly what we're going to build in your home, and then we build it. And we do that on the custom side too. We don't start a home that we haven't already spec'd out and selected. So we call it design then build, not design and build. And so we've really put some emphasis on that, and we're growing that brand. But we also do whole house renovation under that brand as well. So that's been our big focus now, is trying to really bring all of this together and be a one-stop shop for the home buyers, but also for the brokers in our market to be able to say, hey, we have a team that can help our clients, whatever their housing needs are.
And Tracewater also does your new on your lot part of your business model, right?
That's actually really the focus of our business, is on your lot, whether it's custom or semi-custom. It's really an on your lot product. And we look at it as, we're building homes for people that maybe aren't being served by some of the more traditional home building companies that are in the markets that are, you need to build on the lots that we have, and you need to build, the plan that we have that fits that lot. And so we've kind of developed this to meet that need for the home buyers that are really looking. Maybe they don't want a fully custom home experience because either they don't have the time, they've heard horror stories, maybe don't have the budget for a full custom, but we can create that custom experience for them in a semi-custom product and a semi-custom home, which is great.
Right. And so, what are some things that you would share with new business owners just starting out about starting a new company?
Wow. I would say the first thing is, have a plan. So many times, and I am 100% guilty of this. You get into business because you were good at something, and you just decided that, well, I could do this for myself instead of doing it for somebody else, and you start a business. And your only plan is, well, I'm going to probably make more money than I make working for somebody else. And so I would say, as I'm coaching anybody young that's going to be starting a business of their own, it's really, really sit down and develop that plan, and really with the end in mind. Where do I see myself 10 years from now? Or even what's my exit from this business? And then build the business to achieve that. It's just really important.
Well, and I think we noticed that sometimes the struggle is when you're having that conversation, they look at you like, what are you talking about? Because a lot of times the entrepreneur, I was good at it and I'm starting a business. But when you say you need a plan, okay, if I'm a builder, I buy lots and I have some plans and I find some trades and I go into business. So I think how would you speak to that person that maybe has started their company or they're struggling or maybe they're thinking about starting a company? Would you say have a plan? What does that mean? What are you really trying to tell them that they need to go engage with or find out?
That's such a good question because you get, we'll just use home builders for example, because that's obviously our world mostly. Um, so, you're really good at building a house and figuring out all the nuances of how does this stairway fit here and all of that. And, you have some successes there, and then you decide to start your own business. And all of a sudden, you have to do a whole lot of things that you're not really good at anymore. It's an eye opener because you went from, well, I have to manage the lot, so I have to know the dirt contractor, and I have to know the foundation guy and the framer and the plumber and electrician and all of that, which is a lot of knowledge that most people don't have. And now all of a sudden, I have to be an accountant. I have to be a bookkeeper. I have to be my chief marketing officer. I'm in sales now. What about marketing? What, all these things that, you just don't necessarily have that skill set for. And yet you also didn't have a plan for it. And so now you're trying to do these things that you're not really good at and you don't do them really well. And it just becomes a very, very overwhelming thing. And, you get buried in the process.
And I would think with AI, it could help you. There's a book called E-Myth Revisited. And the story is about a lady that's a great baker. And then people keep telling her, you're amazing. So go start your own company. And then the book shares it takes three personalities to run a business. And most of us are really good at one and kind of halfway decent at the other and maybe terrible or have no gifting. So you have to have a visionary leader, somebody that can help us see where we want to go. You got to know operations and how to execute. But then you also have to know, the financial side, and you've got to know how to take care of the books and how to manage cash flow. And so what's interesting is I think AI probably could help a new business owner with, hey, just search, what do I need to know if I'm going to go start a company and what kind of things should I start investing in and understanding because we live in a world of AI. But what would be three or four suggestions you would make of how do I develop a plan, Matt?
I'm going to be honest with you. You kind of hit the nail on the head. I think if I were starting a business brand new today, the first thing that I would do is I would sit down in Chat GPT and I would give it all the parameters I'm starting a business, doing this, doing this, doing this. I'm really good at this, this, and this. And, give me a business plan, a structured business and implementation plan for how to do this. And I would just keep putting information in and develop that through AI. And then you really have to sit down and evaluate that and say, okay, what's number one, what's first, second, third, fourth, and create that action plan for the implementation piece of it too, because you might have a great plan, but without a plan to actually implement it, it doesn't do any good.
And I don't want to brag on coaches or consultants, but it might be beneficial to have somebody that's got some mileage in the journey to speak into you. I find that the handful of clients that I've been able to access as they're getting started or haven't been started long is they're not so far down the road that we can't turn and begin to put in some fundamentals that they didn't have in place. And when they start to understand, man, I should have already been doing this. So maybe there's an opportunity to find somebody that could coach you affordably that might be able to help you not make a ton of mistakes and waste a lot of money and waste a lot of time as you're Googling and having chat GTP tell you how to start your company.
But you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, business, no matter what business it is a team sport. And every like aspect of that business is a team sport. So whether you're in operations or whether you're in sales or whether you're in finance, very seldom, if you're going to create a growing business, can you go that alone? And it's so beneficial to have somebody like you, Bobby, that comes in and just looks at things and says, have you thought about this? What about that? Just, that voice in your ear that's giving you some advice. And even if you're not ready to hear it in the moment, I promise you that those messages, all of a sudden there'll be a day when you'll wake up and go, wow, now I know what Bobby was talking about. Here it is. Okay,
Yes.
let's make that change. Let's implement this thing. So yes, absolutely. Bringing in a consultant that can help you with that, adding that, as part of your team is so valuable.
Yes. So what are maybe top 5 lessons you've learned as an entrepreneur and a company owner that you would want to share with other business owners, even currently? I mean, you've sat in a lot of chairs, run several organizations. Is there a handful of things that you would share with that group today if you could?
So yeah, I mean, and I already said, one, I would say start with the end in mind is one. Number two would be make sure that you're developing your team, and that can be. It doesn't have to be hiring people. That can be figuring out who's my attorney, who's going to be my CPA, who are the people that are going to support me on this journey. Do you have a family member that's going to be involved? It's all of that. um, it's know your market really, really well. Understand what value you bring to your clients. Um, and that's what I run into. A lot of times where I see people not understanding what their biggest thing that they bring forward. What's unique about you that benefits your clients in whatever it is you're building or selling or whatever that is. Um, let's see, that's three. Know your numbers. Um, Knowing your numbers is critical. What do we need to have for gross margin to make the world work for us? And I think team. Knowing how to hire. So knowing how to bring the right people when it is time to hire. And then I'm going to add one more. So I'm going to hit six actually is know yourself. Like, and you really, I mean, that's a journey and it's an ever changing journey, but because the things that I was really passionate about being involved in, um, 25 years ago are not the same things I'm passionate about being involved in the industry and in the business now. And so constantly keeping in touch with yourself on your own journey in the process is really important too.
Think, man, you crushed a bunch of them. Like I was telling another interview we had last Friday that the things that she brought to the table, just like you just said, are things that we've been coaching all around. I did a leadership class last week here in Atlanta, and some of these topics were absolutely part of what we discussed. Develop your team, but not just your staff. What's your support team? Especially what we talked about home building, but it's true in any industry. Who's our attorney? Do we have a really good CPA partner, not a CPA person that takes our stuff and does it and gives it to us later? I mean, a partner that quarterly challenges us and looks at our numbers. What is our partnership and how are we developing our team? Not only our staff, but our outside staff. And I'm with you. The same thing I notice a lot is we don't always know our market. It doesn't matter the industry. We haven't really done our research or homework to really know, which goes right to the next one. So what value are we going to bring in this marketplace with what we do? And does anybody know? How are we promoting or marketing our brand and our value and our process that we feel is so amazing? And the average person in our marketplace doesn't even know we exist, right? And then knowing your team and who to hire, we talked about having some kind of tool. AI could be a great help, but having somebody that's better at interviewing than me, the typical visionary owner may not be the best person to be hiring and interviewing, right? So having a process to try to make sure we're finding the right person that fits our culture, that's driven, that has integrity, that's passionate, it's competitive, they're self-motivated, all those things, and then creating space to help train them and equip them, even if we're a small organization. And the last one you crush, know yourself. So many of us are not aware of our gifts and talents or our frustrations or how we act or react that ripples into the whole organization and can be causing chaos or challenges. And we're not aware of it. So those are awesome.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, that piece of, understanding, who you are and your place in the company, as I said, that can definitely change. Like we have one person in the company right now that's moving, I mean, from like more of an operational role and has been heavily in that operational role. And all of a sudden, we realize we really need a heavy sales leader. And he was like, you know what? That's me. Like, we're laying out what the guidelines are and what the criteria are to like hire this sales leader. And he's like, well, I think it's going to be easier to hire an operations person to replace me than to hire the person you just described that is me. So how about we make that transition? And I'm like, that's the greatest answer ever.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that in that scenario that you show us is that we've created an environment where somebody is comfortable speaking up and talking about, hey, wait a second, I could fill this spot because we know there's some leaders that go, no, we need to keep you where you are. You're very valuable. We'll find somebody else. So creating an environment where your team feels that they can speak up and say what needs to be said and they're not fearful or uncertain, right, is another huge piece of what we're talking about.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. And that's true of, anybody in the organization. You want them to have a level of comfort that they can speak up and even call you out if need be, even as the owner. Actually just before this, we were on a Zoom sales meeting, and I had one of the salespeople say, "Hey, you know what? The next time we have a situation like that, maybe come to me first, and we'll have a conversation about it because I think I could have added value to that and avoided the situation." And I was like, "Wow, yeah, absolutely."
That's awesome. Creating that environment. All right. What are 5 things you've learned maybe about managing and running the operation side of the hats you've been able to wear
I would
operationally?
Yeah, I would say number one, is have a system. Whatever that is. I mean, I don't care if your system is that, you send out the email every morning that, has the tasks for the day. Whatever your system is, have a consistent system. Number two, make sure everybody understands it and, and is trained on it so that they know what that means. And the third thing is probably going to be accountability to the system. And you're seeing a consistent theme here, but operationally, I mean, I really think that's critically important. And then I would say number four is make sure you create a feedback loop on that, so that when things don't go according to plan, you have a process to adjust what you're doing so that it doesn't end up happening again. My wife is part of our company. Jeannie has been part of our everything we've ever done for the last. In fact, we just celebrated our 33rd wedding anniversary. Uh,
Woo! Congratulations.
yeah, so pretty cool. But we always joke we were Chip and Joanna before Chip and Joanna were famous because we've been doing this since we were teenagers. And she's the biggest advocate for how do we never let this happen again. So if something doesn't work, the first thing she's asking is what process are we missing? How do we put that in place? And so I think that it really boils down to that. Every company that I've ever either started or gone into, the key component of that has always been what do we need to implement from a system standpoint. And so we've been involved in several of those implementations with clients together. And you hear it come out of my mouth all the time. We have to have that is has to be like the main source of truth for everybody. Because if like I'll give you an example. I started with one company, and I was running their operations for them, and it was a home building company. And when the first week basically, or 2 weeks, or whatever it takes me, I pretty much just use as fact finding. And I'll even do this with a client when they're asking me to help them with a system. I'll say, you know what, I need to come and I need to get inside your operation. I need to talk to your people. I need to ride around with your superintendents. I need to see what you're not seeing, right? And the first superintendent I rode with, I got in, I started talking about, so how do you manage your projects? And he pulls out the spiral notebook that you took to second grade handwriting class. He pulled one of those out and he goes, well, this is for this job. And then he had another one for another job. And so, he went to the school supply section and bought himself some spiral notebooks, and he had one for every job. So he had a system,
Yes.
but nobody else knew what that system was in the entire company. So there was no way for him to translate that into something that was repeatable or trainable or anything like that. So it was just interesting. And that's when I knew the first thing we have to do is we have to get a computerized system
Yes.
and all of that. And it was really, really easy to get him to buy into that because he now saw an electronic version of what he was doing anyway. But
Yeah.
the beauty of it is now we get everybody doing it the same way all the time. And if for some reason something happened to him, it wasn't, the projects that he was running could just continue on for the client, and the client would not suffer.
That's right. Well, it's interesting, your wife's observation of, hey, wait a second, it's not working. So how do we know whether things are working or not?
How do we know if they're working or not? Oh, wow. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, anytime we have something that doesn't go according to plan, you had a failure somewhere. So I mean, if an inspection on a job site fails, why did it fail? What did we miss? There's something in a checklist that got missed. If you get a communication from a client that is less than enthusiastic, um, there's a reason that they reached out, and it's usually not the immediate reason. So they reached out because there was something prior to that we didn't do properly that, we need to address. So just things, it's observation. It's all of that.
It's a leading question because we talk a lot about metrics. You can't improve what you don't measure. So one of the things that you realize is when you finally get these companies and these owners to figure out a way to start measuring what they're doing, the results they're getting or not getting, that's when you start to realize there may be trends or things happening that we need to address, and we need to start asking why, right? And that's what your wife's voice is, hang on, if we're supposed to be here and we're here, what happened? Right? So
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
how do we address, yes, how do we fix this?
Well, and that's when I talk about systems, that's one of the big things of a system is providing the data to create, the reports and the metrics and all of that are giving you that information. Because if in the example I was giving earlier, if we had to have a production meeting, for example, and we had to sit down with 6 different superintendents that were all using different methods of tracking where their jobs were at, we now have to talk to every one of those superintendents about every one of their projects and get an update from them as to where they're at And, and it's a very, very time consuming process, and it's probably not happening. And if it is, it's burning hundreds of dollars an hour of time for people to sit there and disseminate that information. Whereas if you have that system in place and you have a report, and I can pull up every project and know exactly where we're at a moment's notice, you just took all of that information and dialed it down to a 5-minute glance at a report. And now you can manage by exception. So you can
Yes,
look at it and go, well, we know this job was supposed to be at this point on this date, and it's not. Why is that? And we figure that out. But now we go down to the next 3 jobs are all dead on where they need to be. We don't have anything to talk about.
that's right.
We just we say good job, let's keep moving, and move on to the next one. So we're really managing that whole process, by exception. And the same is true
Yes,
of any of those. I mean, if you're going through your financial metrics, that's true as well. Your sales metrics, all of that. As long as we're on target, we don't really have much to talk about.
that's right.
It's the ones where we're not.
So let me throw you a curveball. So speak to the typical company owner, and it doesn't have to be necessarily the residential home building industry, but the fear of technology and AI seems to be something that's holding a lot of organizations back because some of the older demographic doesn't understand it. We don't know how to implement it. We don't know how to do it. Right. And so we might be intimidated. So speak a second into you probably need to try it.
All right, so this is gets very personal for me because I was an extremely late adapter to social media. I just, it to me early on was like, this is such a time waster. And I couldn't get on board with, social media really at all. And I avoided it for a long time. I then decided to get involved in social media reluctantly when I was told you have to get involved in social media. It's good for business, whatever. And I'm now in that transition of, okay, I need to enthusiastically adapt the new things that are coming down the pipeline with social media. And so I've had to really shift my mind on what that means. Um, on technology, I've always been a big proponent of technology and figuring out how to make systems work. And, if I can be on the job site and run a project from my phone, I mean, to me, that's amazing. I mean, if I can go on a vacation and I can pull up an app on my phone and I can know everything that's going on while I'm gone at a glance, that to me is amazing. It's just the social media piece. I've been a very, very slow adapter, and actually we'll call it a very, very reluctant adapter. Um, Honestly, until like last week when my wife said, here's the deal. You're going to get more
Yeah.
involved in social media, and here's how you're going to do it. And I'm like, all right, fine. I just have to shift my mindset and get very enthusiastic about it, because it's not slowing down. It's only speeding up. And if you look at what AI has done to not just the home building industry, but every industry, the things that you can do with AI now, like for example, I was sitting having dinner with a friend who's he's in technology sales, and we were just chatting about apps. And he also has a company that runs off a separate company that runs off of an app. And he said, I spent all this time and money developing this app. And he goes, watch what I can do now. And he pulls up an AI app writer, and he said, what should we create an app on? And so I gave him some criteria on this app that I thought we should create. And while we were sitting waiting for appetizers, we developed an app, like functioning. He published it, and I was able to go on my phone and download it and start using it in a matter of probably 20 minutes. So that is the speed that technology has allowed us to do things that, that writing that app would have taken you 3 years. And now you can do it in 20 minutes. It's insane. So it's
So
kind of
so
like
speak.
adapt or die.
Yeah. Well, so speak to the social media piece. Yes, and to me, there's a way to maybe to delegate it. But for me, I'm trying to do the same thing, Instagram and stuff, starting to play in that game. But speak to the company owner that's stuck with trying technology. Maybe we've been doing it the same way we've been doing it, and it seems to work okay. Like we know, Good to Great says technology is the accelerator to greatness. It's not going to change you or fix you. But if you're using Word and Excel and you're having meetings and you're going over notes face to face all of the time, there may be an opportunity for technology a software package or something that could turbocharge what you're doing. But whoa, I don't have anybody on my team that knows how to do that. And I'm super nervous. I'm going to screw it up and I won't know how to get anything out of it. So just speak to that reluctancy, because I see it rampant, not because owners don't know they want it or don't, and they really kind of want to do it. They're just totally intimidated.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes again back to, as an entrepreneur, the typical personality is I have to do it on my own. I'm a superhero. I can do everything by myself. I have to do it on my own. There's all of that. And the only way that you get past that is by getting past that. You like have to just flip that switch in your mind that says, look, I know what I'm really good at and I know what I'm really not good at. And typically the things that you're not necessarily great at are the ones that trigger fear because you're so used to being good at things that when you're not, now it does trigger
Mm,
that fear. So,
that's
that's
good.
a little bit of looking internally and realizing, hey, if I bring on somebody that already knows that, you use the word accelerant. I mean, it's literally like putting gasoline on a fire. Like you could muddle along, trying to do it. And then you bring somebody in that really that's their skill. And all of a sudden, in a matter of a short time, you're up and running. And think of the pressure that takes off you as the owner when you know that that can get done without you having to do that. It's a huge.
Oh, preach. All
And
right.
we're
So
doing
how
that
about,
internally right now, just as an example. We're implementing several different new systems right now. And one of them is a system that we just don't really have the capacity or the knowledge to implement it quickly. We just brought in an implementation team, and they're going to work side by side and get it up and running. What would take us probably a year or more, we'll have up and running in 90 days. Think of the value in that.
oh, so you started the session with begin with the end in mind. If I'm going to be starting a company, the same way with where we are in our journey, is there a way to go faster or more profitable or better employee satisfaction or better customer satisfaction or more life balance for me as the owner by looking outside of the box we've always been in? There's huge value in what you just said.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Again, sometimes you don't, you think, oh, I need to hire a person. And sometimes you really don't need to hire a person. What you need to do is you need to bring in somebody alongside you for a moment. It's
Yes.
not, maybe it's not a long-term relationship. And that's where the consulting piece is so valuable. And if you look out there, I guarantee you the problem that you're having is never going to be unique to you. There's somebody out there that has had this problem. They figured out how to solve it efficiently, effectively, and now they want to go out and help other people avoid the pain that they had. And
Yes.
so you can go out and find that consultant and maybe it's something you only need for 60 days or 6 months. And now I guess your goal is always to be creating new problems. So you bring somebody in, they help you solve that problem, and now you have a different problem. You have a problem of you know sales training, for example. Like let's say sales is your number one goal. You're going to bring somebody in, you're going to help them grow your sales team and generate sales, and it works beautifully. Now the problem you just created is I now might have an operations problem. I now need to perform on all the sales that I've sold. So now I might need somebody different to help me streamline some operations because we
Yes.
broke some things that we didn't realize we had issues
Yes.
in because we stretched the rubber band a little further than we had it planned for.
Yes. And I think the example we've used often is, your business is like a forest. And so as you begin to get a coach or a consultant, or you have people on your team that can identify some areas where we need to improve or get better, as we fix those, there's another row behind that. Like we couldn't get to fixing this because we couldn't see it until we got this addressed. And now that we've addressed it, now that we fix sales, our operations can't keep up. So now that we fixed our operations, now accounting can't keep up. So I think there's this process of continuous improvement, which you mentioned before. It should never be status quo or we always do it this way. Is there any way to do it better or more efficient or faster or more profitable? Should always be the culture we try to create,
Yeah, yep, exactly. And the culture is so huge. I mean, in every organization, and if you can create that culture where people are collaborative in solving problems rather
Mm,
than every time a problem comes up, they're pointing a finger at somebody else. That's a winning formula right there. You have an issue, and the first question everybody asks is not who do I blame, how do we solve it, and how do we not
yes,
have this problem again? Now you know you're winning.
that's right. And as the owner, to create a culture where they're not always coming to you. Like
Yeah,
let's
absolutely.
let's solve it in the chair we sit in, and then we can bounce our solution off the owner. But in so many situations, I've seen the whole team run down to the owner, hoping he has the answers to all of the world, and he tries to for years, but he doesn't. Right, and so if you can create the culture where we have our own ownership, where we're spinning ideas and we're collaborating, man, he's freed up or she's freed up to do a whole new level of things they've never had time to do before.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things as an owner that it took me a long time to get to is that exact thing where I don't have to know every problem that happens. I don't have to solve them. I don't have to be that hero. So asking the question, when somebody comes to you with a problem, like, a good question to ask is, what do you suggest? How do you suggest we handle this? Normally, they already know the answer. They're just coming to you for
Yes,
confirmation. And I'm like, probably 80% of the time, you're like, that's great. Go ahead and run with it. And
yes,
each time that same thing comes up, they're not even going to come to you with it.
no, that's right. So, what are a couple things that you would suggest that we do not do? Like if you're starting a company or you've got your company going, here's some things that you just make sure you don't do.
Oh, wow. I would say do not. Well, I mean, I'm just going to go right back to the don't try to go it alone. I mean, just, don't try to do it by brute force. Um, I mean, that's probably the number one thing that has hurt me in business is thinking I had to do everything and do too much. Um, and then I would say the other thing is don't hire out of necessity. Um, every time I would go back to, I mean, I can go back 25 years and think every time I've hired because I had an urgent need, I've probably made a bad choice. Um, and so planning your hiring out ahead. So, there's just business in general, but especially home building, but business in general goes through this ebb and flow where you've got like, you're climbing and then you plateau and then you climb and you plateau. And understanding that cycle and knowing when you need to bring people on and hiring early instead of late. It's always the late hires out of necessity that end up being the bad ones.
Well, and I think part of that goes back to vision and begin with the end in mind. If we kind of know what we're trying to achieve this quarter or this year or the next 3 years or the next 5 years, if we stay on top of that and we're communicating often quarterly or whatever about that process, it starts to tell you if we're going to do 50 next time, we're going to need at least a person and maybe a person and a half. When do we need them? Well, so I think that vision of where we're going and keeping your hand on the pulse of how we're doing based on where we're trying to get to is the key that I see places go sideways. We wake up one day and we've been super successful. You're like, oh no, we don't have enough. We need to go hire one of those or one of those. And you're right. The reactive hiring it as does not normally produce good results.
Well,
I
and
mean, you're
here's the,
exactly
the
right.
other piece of the go it alone was the first thing I said. And it's not even necessarily, a lot of people hire, and I've been guilty of this too, where, I have people doing things, but I'm still going it alone because everything still comes back to me. Right.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
haven't given enough autonomy to the people to do the things that they need to do to avoid that coming back to me. And the problem with that is, let's say you've got sales, production, finance are probably the three biggest things, that are in an organization. Well, if everything's coming back to me and I see a problem with production and I've got to, get down from 30,000 feet and focus on production, guess what happens to sales and finance? They get neglected, right? Well, now I got production fixed, but now I've got a problem in sales. So all I'm doing at that point is putting out fires,
Yes.
and you never get everything working like, meshing like this at once.
That's right. All right. So what would be one thing or two things that you would every business owner to take away from our session today?
Man, I would say that probably the top two things would be, adapt, always be adapting, technology especially, always be adapting, always be looking at your company and saying, what can we do new? What can we do different? How has our industry changed that's going to cause us to have to change, and getting out ahead of that instead of behind it? So just, adaptability is key. And then, we hammered on it so many times. Use other people, consultants, advisors, bring on great team members instead of bringing on people that you have to bring on, cultural alignment is so huge in that. And even with, you're talking about consultants, making sure that the consultants you're bringing on are culturally aligned with you as well. Because if they're not, you're not going to get the value out of them that you need.
Yes. All right, Matt, time's up, but thank you so much.
Right.
This is Matt Haynes, Tracewater Homes. We're so glad that you joined us today. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Bobby Mink with Choice Consulting and Management. So thank you so much for joining us today on Choices Create Change podcast. We'd love your comments, or if you have some topics you'd love for it to discuss, just go to choiceconsultingman.com/comments and leave us a note, and we'll put the topic on the schedule, and we'll find out some details, and we'll bring it up on a future podcast. So thank you so much, Matt.
Thank you. Have a good one.